Hi, and welcome back to Dog Speak. Today we have the wonderful Kay Attwood, who's going to tell us all about her services and what she does at Canine Services. And there's a little surprise coming towards the end. Welcome, Kay. Welcome to Dog Speak. How are you?
Hi, Colin. I'm very
Oh,
well, thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
great. That's great. It's nice to have you. Yeah. Kay, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? When did you start your work?
All right. Well, I started in 2005, a long time ago now. And I came from the corporate world and I unfortunately had a heart attack. So I had to change my life dramatically. And I'd always wanted to have a dog because I'd had dog as kids, but never had a dog as an adult. So I thought, oh, I've got to spend time at home. I'm going to have a dog. So I got a little dog, little Gibson, little Jack Russell Cross, and took him to classes. And I thought, oh, I loved it. I just fell into training like a glove. And Gibson and I went all the way to advanced. And then when I got to advanced, I thought, well, what are we going to do now? There's nowhere else for him to go. They don't offer anything else. So I looked around, various other dog training classes didn't offer anything else at that level. So I thought, I'll do the next best thing. I'll volunteer as a trainer at a class and I'll start again and I'll do the whole thing again, not with Gibson, just helping teach. Well, after a few months, I was taking classes on my own because I just loved it so much. I was obsessed with teaching dog training. So I was reading up on stuff and I was doing courses and pretty much I was running this person's dog training school. And then I thought, ting, I'm missing out here. So I opened my own school. And then in 2005, Canine Services was born. And I started to offer classes and I did dog walking classes. But then I got more and more involved because I was doing dog training workshops and myself attending them. I was meeting all these fabulous dog trainers and I was just totally in awe by them. And I thought, there's more that I need to learn. And I got obsessed about learning about behavior. And the more I learned, the better I got, obviously. And I was meeting all these brilliant people. And then I was sat in a workshop for platform training by Michelle Pilio. And it
Okay.
was I was sat with Michelle Heading, who's from Peterborough. And I was talking to her, watching this demonstration, and I was saying, oh, well, if she did this, that dog would do that. And if she did that, and she said to me, how do you know all of this? And I said, well, I've been teaching platforms in my classes. And I kind of said it like I've been really naughty. So she said, you need to come and teach a workshop for me. I said, what, me? Teach a workshop? You're joking. She said, no, I'm not. So I did, and it went brilliantly. And I ended up. Of course, it went all over Facebook, and then I ended up going all over the country teaching platforms. I'd hire a van, it'd be chock a block with platforms, and up I'd go on the motorway. It just went off by there. But I mean, going back to my business, I also, before I started doing workshops, I also did things like my own workshops for my customers, not for dog trainers, for reactivity, and I did puppy socialization. And I always tried to look for something that was totally different to what anyone else was offering. Now, I was in a good place to start because I was and always had been force free. I didn't want any pain, intimidation, etc., etc. So there were a lot of local trainers that I could just put aside because they used punishment in a different way. So I started to do like my puppy social sessions. Well, when people came, it was very quick that they were like, what? So I've come to a puppy social class, but you don't want my puppy to be physically interact with all the other puppies? No. And I'll tell you why. And the minute you explain it all, you see that light bulb go, oh, yeah, of course. If he just thinks it's all about playing with other dogs, he'll run off to play with other dogs. And that means he'll pull on the lead to get to other dogs, etc., as well as people. So I always try to go for a little different angle. So that's how my puppy socials were born, and they just went crazy. My classes started to get really full with a waiting list. So I knew I was doing something right. I knew I was doing something. So I just carried on, built, and it just built and built, and I got busier and busier. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. So I went from working in a corporate world, and now I work in the dog world, and I just get to play with dogs every day.
which is
It's not
fantastic.
like it's not like working, is it? Really?
It's a bit of everything. It's a bit of everything. Just going back to the socialization classes for those that may not be trainers, watching this. Can you sort of like explain what a socialization class does entail? What your socialization classes entail?
Hmm. Well, obviously, there's only so much you can deal with in a class environment. But in my social sessions, we used to deal with socialization with people, other dogs, loads and loads of equipment, things that make funny noises, and especially when it's not expected, like loud bangs, and how to deal with that, how to deal with the fear that the puppy might show rather than, ignore it and just say, oh, let him get on with it, he'll get used to it. Because unfortunately, he might not. Not every puppy is got predisposed to have the ability to deal with fear. They don't, like humans, we all deal with it differently. So there would be lots and lots of equipment on the floor, and there would be lots of treats available because we want it, everything that happens to be positive for that puppy, because they're like little sponges and they're soaking up information all day long throughout their puppy lives. And that is the concrete foundation going forward for adulthood. So we've got to, as dog guardians, we've got to make sure that we do the best that we possibly can to give them that good foundation so that they can go out into the community and not be fearful of everything. So you've got to start it as soon as you possibly can. So in my sessions, it would be on lead to start with, and it would be on a mat, on a Kong, to learn to settle in an environment where there's a lot of other people and dogs, a lot of excitement going on, a bit of noise, and learn to ignore it. So what if there's another dog there? So what if there's another person walking past? Ignore it. And it's about teaching owners how to teach their dog to ignore things instead of taking them up to things and going, oh, all right, then go on, say hello. And sometimes it would be also about teaching the puppy there are times when you will be able to, and there are times when you won't be able to. So not to expect to be able to all the time. Because, I have a little saying in life that you can't have what you want when you want it all the time.
That's a fantastic saying. I grew up with hearing that as well.
So did I.
And you know, heard it quite a lot. And that's how I like to bring my puppies up, so that there isn't an expectation that I see another dog, it must be playtime.
Yeah.
It could be, it might be, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
A
I
nice
want
good,
them to be the predictor of good stuff coming from the owners.
can't disagree with that. Cannot
Mm.
disagree with that at all. Um, when people sign up to a good socialization puppy class, um, then they're onto a good thing. So, people that have used you in the past and worked with you in the past, um, they couldn't have done much better or any better at all, because socialization in classes is not what most people think. They think it's something different. So if we can, everything you have just said, for me, it's that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that. And the puppies need to also be able to self-regulate, to be able to see process and remain fourth paws on the floor. Yeah. Unless you encourage them to go and play for that 5, 10 seconds, whatever it is, but they shouldn't be, what's the word, anticipating with the pulling of the lead, etc., etc. So I
Mm.
totally agree with you on that one. You also do you work with rescue dogs. What's that all about?
Well, I mean, I haven't done any visits to rescue centres to do any behavioural work with them since before COVID, funny enough. But I, I've got a real passion about when somebody takes a dog from rescue. My passion is I've got to do everything I possibly can to keep that dog in that home because too many rescue dogs have too many homes. And that, for whatever, there are many reasons why that happens. But sometimes, unfortunately, it's because they've gone to the wrong dog has gone to the wrong home. So I want to be in that process to start that so that the dog has got the best possible start together with the new owner, and it stays there. So we can iron out little things that sometimes that's why people send them back. And it could be something that is so easy to fix, but if nobody helps them fix it,
Mhm.
it doesn't, it just gets worse because it's not fixed. And then the dog gets sent back, unfortunately. But many dogs that I've worked with in that have had several homes in various rescue centres, they've gone back for the silliest of little things, really. And it breaks my heart. So I've always had a passion to keep rescue dogs in the homes that they're in, because that hurts to try to give a dog back.
It does, and you're so right when you say there are so many different reasons as to why dogs go back into rescue or go into rescue in the first place.
Mm,
And then, unfortunately, there are the odd rescue centres that rehome the wrong dog to the wrong home, and that poor dog suffers and goes through the same thing a few weeks later. Yeah,
yeah.
not
And
even
there are
months.
so many rescue organisations now.
It's getting to a point where it's like walking into the old Blockbusters video shop and you're trying to find a video, and you could be there for weeks. There are so
Yeah.
many rescues now. There are so many rescues now. Some are good, some are indifferent, and some are bad. Yeah. So for a rescue, for those that are listening, that have probably just acquired a rescue recently or looking to acquire a rescue, what's one of the first things they should do when a rescue comes to them?
I always say build a relationship because this dog has been moved out of another environment that it may have been in for a while, so it was comfortable as it could be, or it may have been in there short term, so it's had lots of different environments. And that can't be very good for a dog to settle. So now that it's in your environment, get used to that environment with that dog, but build a relationship. So that's lots and lots of positive reinforcement. Depending on the dog and owner, sometimes I might even say to them, don't even go for walks at the moment. You know, go round the garden together, go round the garden on a lead together, start your lead walking in the garden together, around the house together, but do as much as you can together. Even if you work from home, have the dog sitting nearby you so that you can keep comfort him and talk to him. But the first thing is build that relationship, because going forward, that relationship is your bond. No bond, no relationship. It's that circle. So that's one of the first things I always say to people. Get to know the dog, let the dog get to know you in your environment, and don't have loads and loads of visitors coming over just yet. Make it quite help the dog bond with you and the family, of course.
That makes all perfect. That makes a lot of sense. I
Mm.
mean, I do tend to find that people rush exposure with rescues. And by rushing that exposure of whatever it may be, whether that's people coming to the home, trying to do too much, or having far too much of an expectation, um, the dog cannot bond with you if we've got expectations that far outweigh what they're capable of. Yeah. Then we have a question that I'm going to ask you now. Do you think there's a difference between getting a rescue from here, say from Battersea, or one that's coming from abroad?
Oh, there's a can of worms.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
do you
There
see
can be a
differences?
huge difference, huge, because if a dog has been rescued in this country, it's been exposed to this criteria. But
Mhm.
a dog that's come from maybe, let's just say Romania or Croatia or whatever, they've been exposed to a totally different criteria of things, life. And sometimes there's a huge difference between the two. So when you take a dog from the UK, its behavior issues and that it needs to be addressed are totally different than those that are from abroad. If it's from abroad, it's had to travel from abroad. So it's sometimes they come over on a lorry and they're rehomed from the lorry late at night. So you've got those issues as well. Their social skills are polar opposites. So there's a huge, that's what I say is a can of worms. There's a huge difference. Resources in England, in a rescue centre, as opposed to abroad, they're polar opposites too. And you can have horror stories in both, but they are polar opposites,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I think anyone that's looking to rescue a dog from abroad really needs to do some good research into rescues coming from abroad,
And
and
speak to someone
finding,
else who's got one from
yeah,
abroad.
yeah, finding trainers and behaviourists that work with and specialise their niches working with dogs coming from abroad. Because like you said, they are polar opposites. So the environment here in the UK is completely different to the environment anywhere else in the world. And what our dogs get exposed to here in the UK have similarities from one house to the next. There are similarities. Their roads are the same, more or less. Parks are more or less the same. The way we speak's more or less the same. The smells are very similar. Yeah. And the climate. We've got to take climate to
Yeah.
account as well. So dogs coming from abroad are not
They may not have even been in a home environment.
absolutely, absolutely. That said, I have seen some wonderful dogs that have come from abroad compared to the ones that have come from Battersea.
Yes, that's why I say it is a can of worms because you can't label. I hate labels anyway, but you can't say, oh, this dog's going to be like that because it's from so and so, and this dog's going to be like that because it comes from so and so. It's all different.
It's that lottery ticket again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that same old saying, train the dog in front of you.
That's a saying that's been around, God blimey, when I first started years ago. It's not gone anywhere. It will always be work with the dog that's in front of you.
Yeah,
Meet that particular needs, know that dog's individual needs, because they can be slightly different to the dog you're going to work with later. Yeah.
yeah. So we can
Um,
never assume that because they've come from Romania, they're going to need this, this, and this. Or because it comes from Battersea, it's going to need that, that, and that. We shouldn't ever make assumptions.
dog in front of us will tell us what they need. You know, whether that's vocalization or body language, which is the same body language, all their whatever they need, we should be able to see as professionals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And help the owner to meet those needs. Um, Talking about rescues, I understand you also work with aggression.
Yep. I do. I love it. I love I love being able to work with dogs that react to various things, and changing their lives for them and their owners.
Mhm.
Because I always say to my people that I work with, we've got to play dog detective, and we've got to find out, why is this happening? Why does he do that? Why does he do it then and not then? And what's the difference between why does he do it for you and why doesn't he do it for you? So you've got to do detective and look at everything. So there, it involves initially loads and loads of questions. I mean, the form that they have to fill out before I even start working with them gives me a lot of clues, and I can read between the lines of various things, you know. So I've already got my little detective hat on. And then when I go to see them, I get loads more questions and loads more answers. I get even more information. And at the same time, I can watch that dog. What's it like when they're in the room? What's it like when they're out the room? You know, I'll often say to a dog, if it's appropriate, I might get a treat out and ask them to sit, and it doesn't sit. And then I don't repeat it. I don't say sit again. And the owner starts going, oh, we can sit, sit. And I go, no, leave him. I know that he can sit, because most dogs can. It's usually, you know, one of the first things they learn. I want to know, how comfortable does he feel with me that he can sit? They go, oh, I didn't realise, you know. But I think that's quite sweet, really. But you know, I'm looking at that dog and I'm reading it all the time when I'm asking questions. And so I love playing detective, but I love to look at why it's happening and then fix the why, fix the
I'm,
when, fix the
I'm,
where.
I am so glad you've used that word why, because it's only when we can find out what the why is can we move forward in helping the dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
because under every behavior, there is a reason as to why it does what it's doing and responding to the environment in the way that it does. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, a good professional's going to find out why first
Yeah.
before we look to do any form of work.
Well, when
So,
you look at the why, the when and the where follows.
absolutely, absolutely. And we're not surmising them because we have done the word detective work. We've done all that detective work. We're now got the paperwork ready, yeah, and we're now going to put into place a plan, yeah, set up a criteria of what we're going to do next with the owners. And that then leads me into asking, what types of aggression have you worked with?
Well, just to go back a little tiny step, just to say, when I've got that plan together, sometimes, not all the time, I have to sell it to the owners.
Yeah, I
But
forgot that bit.
sometimes they're on board going, I don't care what it takes. I just want it to stop, which is great. But so your question, sorry, repeat it, because I was still thinking about what we were talking about.
Yeah, what types of aggression have you worked
Right.
with?
Oh, well, dogs, I always explain dogs use aggression as a tool. It will either make something happen that they want to happen, or it will stop something happening that they don't want to happen.
Mhm.
So sometimes we've just got to teach them that there are other tools available. They don't need that tool. And that tool is carried in the back pocket, and they just take it out whenever they think they need it. And that comes from a learned behavior pattern. So sometimes it's just a case of teaching the dog, aggression isn't the tool you need. You need to do this instead. So sometimes it's just that. But the types of aggression is aggression on people, aggression on dog, resource guarding. That's an aggression. It could be anything. I mean, I like to use the word reactivity, because they're reacting to something and using aggression as a tool, reacting to that, whatever it is, that trigger or whatever. So it depends on that, really. What's the trigger and what's the focus of that reactivity? So all sorts, really. You know, dogs might use aggression with each other, not because well, it might be, I'm frightened of you and I think you're going to bite me, so I'll bite you back first. or I'll bite you first. Or it might be, you're sitting in the warm spot on the sofa and I want it. Or I want that toy. It could be anything like that. We tend to label aggression as a huge plethora of activities. And really, there's a lot of little tiny elements to it all. So it's not one great big, again, it's a label.
Yeah.
And you can't, and I always say there's no such thing as an aggressive dog.
No. Emotions make us humans perform or do what we do. Dogs, being a sentient being, also have emotions and they
Yeah,
work in exactly the same way. Yeah. There is
yeah,
always a reason as to why. There's always
yeah.
that reason to why this is happening now or will happen later on. Um, the word aggression is just like an umbrella word again, and there's little different branches of
Mm,
what the dog does. Reactivity for me is we're all reactive, otherwise we'd all be dead. Yeah. We're
yeah.
all responding to things in the environment, and we respond to things for whatever reasons we're responding.
And it could,
So
even redirected aggression. It's a case of, ow, I just burnt my finger. That was your fault.
absolutely, I couldn't have done that one better myself. So we're all reactive. We have to be reactive, responsive, whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
Um, Labels are a very, very difficult thing because I was speaking to, I think it was a client. Yes, it was a client, and who had labels for everything. And we both agreed that labels are not good, but then we agreed that labels are good because we walk into a store, we need the items to be labeled, yeah, so we know exactly what we're buying and getting. So for me, it's a catch-22 because if we don't use labels to a point and sensibly and appropriately, yeah, then other people don't know what we're talking about. I don't like the word reactive because all dogs are reactive. Everyone thinks, or most people tend to think reactive means growling dogs, lunging. What about the puppy that's jumping up to say hi?
yeah. Well, it's our job to educate
Yeah,
people about that and what these sayings that are floating around, aggression, reactivity. Once we educate dog owners, that's when they fully understand them and they start using them in a better way. But otherwise, a lot of people are like, oh, don't let your dog go near that dog, it's aggressive. But they don't know why that dog is using that tool or
yeah.
reacting in that way. It might be because they keep taking their dog too close and it doesn't like it. So you're right about labels, but for us, labels are easier to understand because our comprehension is we can comprehend labels better than the dog can.
100%. And I think we need to be able to remember exactly what you just said so that we are treating the dog fairly, yeah, and
Yeah,
working with the dog appropriately because we're using labels. Dogs do not understand labels. They just understand this is how I feel, which then
yeah,
automatically kicks in with the emotional response. Um, Life is life, I suppose. Life is such. We're
yeah.
not perfect. We're not perfect. And sort of like kicking on from there, um, for those that are listening, um, there's always discussions around this particular thing we're going to talk about now, and that's cognitive learning. Yeah. But for those that are watching that don't understand, what is cognitive learning?
Well, it's something that is only recently, the last few years, been talked about because that word cognition, cognitive learning, you would never hear that before. But it's a great little caption for because it's got so much involved in it. And I didn't even know that I was doing cognitive learning in my classes until I started looking into it a little bit more. All right. So I mean, let me tell you how I got into it and
Yep.
how I discovered it. But I did my obedience classes, and they went from puppyhood to advanced. And then when I got to advanced, and people had come all the way through, I remembered what happened to me in Gibson, thinking, what do I do now? So I had to invent another level. And I had the same, but before I got to that point, I had the same people that were coming back to my advanced classes over and over again because they didn't want to stop. So every time I had to change the content. So I was being forced to think outside of the box, thinking, what am I going to do with these people now for 6 weeks? Because each course was 6 weeks long. And they got so good at doing all this brain stuff, which was cognitive learning. I had to introduce another level, which was masterclass. So I ended up with advanced level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, masterclass.
Mhm.
And then when you're at the masterclass, you stay at masterclass. And now that's being changed every 6 weeks, and they're still running today.
Wow.
So I had to start thinking about doing different things. And I thought, well, we've now got them to the stage where their level of obedience is brilliant, brilliant enough to be working off lead and not going off to the next dog, staying with the owner and going, we're a team now, what are we doing? So that in itself was brilliant. And people loved that. So that's how my cognitive learning for myself was born, because I had to start thinking of new things to do. And that's when I started to introduce things like discrimination and scent discrimination and, visual discrimination, auditory, all that sort of thing, and various different games. Because at the end of the day, it was a games class that used the brain thinking about stuff. All right. So cognition and cognitive learning is all about, there's so much to it. It's really difficult to put it into one sentence even. But it's a form of learning where you can use all sorts of things like short-term memory, auditory skills. You can bank things that you've learned and recall them after you've done various other skills. So for example, you can say to a dog, learn that, and now do that, that, and that, and now remember what you just learned before that. So you've got multitasking, you've got teaching the brain or teaching the dog that it does have a choice and to make a choice, how to get things wrong and not worry about it, how to get things wrong and learn from it, how to teach a dog, well, if that's wrong, don't go back there, go there. Now you might think well, they do that all the time with punishment and reward. They do, but when you start teaching it at a cognitive level, it is a higher level of learning. So you've got, there's just so much involved, which is why, to me, it was so, and still remains, you might be able to tell because I get really animated, but
Yes.
it's so exciting. And I just thought, instead of thinking, I went from, oh, blimey, what am I going to do with these people because they keep coming back? What am I going to teach them to, oh my God, there's so much we can do. I'm going to do this and then we're going to do that. And when we've done that, when we've taught them to do that, we can do this. And it just went on and on and on. And they got just as excited about it as I was. And I thought, I've hit the jackpot here. I've got people going, yeah, let's do that. And I've also got dogs going, yeah, let's do that. Because then what I noticed started happening, especially in my workshops that I was doing cognitive training with dog trainers, and for my customers, I would allow one dog that had issues with other dogs to attend.
Okay.
And they would all work on the same thing. But that dog would be in an area that he had plenty of space, plenty. And I would make it clear that you lot, must not deviate over in that space, and that dog is not deviating over there. And I found that the dog that had issues was not exhibiting any of them. Its triggers, the other dogs, it was totally ignoring because he was having such a good time. The owner then relaxed because they were having a good time. The dog was having a good time. And then over the course of that workshop, the space that it would have was getting slightly smaller and smaller. And I was monitoring it all the time. And if it was people that he was worried about, I was getting closer and closer whilst I was instructing, because I would start from afar. But I would notice that these dogs were starting to work in an environment that they would never have been able to tolerate before. So I knew that using that dog's brain power and tapping into various parts of the brain, memory, flexibility, that sort of thing, it was allowing that dog to change his behavior.
Those kind of classes, when they are run by trainers like yourself, run amazingly well. Yeah. Because you're giving dogs that are environmentally challenged the opportunity also to work alongside dogs that are not environmentally challenged in the same way, to open their mind and to focus on other distractions, if you like, whatever it is you've got in front of them to do, and whilst they
Yeah.
can focus on that and still be in the same environment. That does help them to settle better with other dogs or humans. So
Mm,
those kind of classes I'm all for,
mm.
100%.
And I think
Um,
the one of the main things as why that happened is that through the game playing, the choice making, that dog was learning to make informed choices. Now, in order to make an informed choice, you've got to have information. So that means your focus and listening skills are involved to learn to become informed and then to make a decision based on that information. So whereas before they may react to a trigger like that, they were now learning, well, hang on a minute, let me look what's my choices here. And now they're starting to look at the environment in front of them that would normally worry them and go, well, let me learn a little bit more about this. Let me just watch for a minute. And it's teaching that dog, just watch, just see what's happening first, then make an informed choice. That was one of the biggest things that I noticed, that dogs that were coming that had some issues with other people or dogs, etc., whatever, that was making a huge difference.
Processing is something we all need to do. We do it just as much as dogs do. You look up ahead and you're going out and you think, what's going on out there? Let me just
Yeah.
stand and watch. Let me take
And
it
it's
all in.
okay to do nothing.
Absolutely. Let's learn a little bit more about what I'm looking at. Yeah. Then I can
Yeah.
make an informed choice of whether I get closer or get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we're animals, and I think a lot of people forget that we are animals. Yeah. We're a mammal. The dog is a mammal. We think, we cry, we have emotions. Um, yeah, all those things.
Mm.
Which,
But I decided to call it cognitive skills because I think they are skills. They need to be learned. They're in there, but the dog isn't using them. So we need to teach those as skills. And they can learn all sorts of fantastic things, focus and attention. That has to be learned, how to do it, how to do it in various different environments when faced with various different things, how to process information and what then to do with it, how to deal with your frustration,
yes,
how to tolerate different things and deal with the frustration that you might feel, and how to be flexible in your learning, um, self-control, how to do that, how to be self-motivated. to be able to be motivated and to be able to motivate yourself sometimes, and make the right decisions based on all of that information. So you're utilizing a lot of stuff in cognitive skills. So it's difficult to pinpoint one thing because there's so much involved. The brain is very complex.
Yes. My own brain is that complex. What Dogs are going to be complex completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 When we talk about our own emotions and how we respond to things, how we understand and learn things, it's complex in itself. Yeah. So
Mm.
I don't understand when we then have an expectation that dogs are going to just get it. They're not.
No.
So they do need that help and that support. And whilst we were talking about that, I think it's time for you to tell school what's happening very, very shortly and what's happened today. So you've got something to announce to us all.
I
Fire away.
have. And and I just said that, I get excited and animated when I talk about, cognition and cognitive skills. And I used to get like that when I was teaching my classes. So I decided to write a book. So I wrote a book. It's called Canine Cognitive Skills. It comes out on the 1st of December, but it's available to buy now because they're actually at the publishers ready to be shipped out. 17.99, and it will take you from, and it's for dog owners and dog trainers because it's for people who just want to have a lot of fun with their dog. You know, you might want to do different things because your dog's had an operation. It's lots and lots of games that you can play in the house and that they're low impact. So you can make them as high impact as you want to. You can, adapt them, but they're all the way from beginners level right up to advanced. So as you go through the book, you get more and more advanced on the games. So follow it through, play all the different games. That will set your dog up ready for the next level. And you'll go through all things to teach tolerance, frustration, all the things that I just mentioned, flexibility, short-term memory. It will tap into a lot of skills. And the skills that they'll learn are how to teach. The owners are going to learn things, the dogs are going to learn things, obviously, but things like directional cues, visual discrimination, audible discrimination. And, once you get to the end of the book, I'm hoping that a lot of owners will think, well, if he can do that, I wonder if he can do that, and start to make up their own games, you
Yeah.
know. But it's teaching them, even if you haven't got a retrieve, it will teach you retrieve in order to do a certain game. Matching items, color discrimination, all sorts of things. It's just fantastic. And who can play? Puppies from from 8 weeks right up to old age. And the more we know, I mean, there aren't any scientific papers to prove it, but we know that the more we use the brain, the better it becomes. And then in age, as the brain cells decline, we know that if we try to keep up with things, we can help the brain to stay at a fitter level. All right. It doesn't prove that it gets rid of dementia, because it can't get rid of dementia, but you can help the brain remain as fit as possible for the brain's age and state at that moment in time. So my mother had dementia, and she, in her previous work, she had been a bookkeeper, and she did accounts and everything like that. Sharp as a pin when it came to maths, sharp as anything. Ask her what she had for breakfast, no clue. Ask her what my dad's middle name was, can't remember. But give her a book, a Sudoku book,
Mhm.
give her a book like that, does it in 5 minutes flat. Because that part of her brain was so exercised,
Yeah,
it was still not as good because you probably wouldn't be able to do accounts. Don't ask her to do your VAT return, but that part of her brain was so exercised and fit, it had remained fitter than the other parts of the brain that she didn't use, as like memory that she'd lost. So
yeah.
it is a fact that it helps. Definitely
Well,
helps.
if you can just remind people the name of your book and where they can actually get it, where can they acquire one of your books? Copy.
Well, it's called Canine Cognitive Skills, and at the moment you can buy it from a company called Performance Dog, and that's what's their website? Oh, performancedog.co.uk. But if you go to sales, you can email them or you can phone them. Go onto their website. But there is a link to the book sales on my Facebook page if you want to have a look at my business one, Canine Services, or just search me because I've got a public presence on Facebook, Kay Attwood. You'll be able to find a link and buy it there direct from there, from the publisher. But I dare say that it will eventually, because it's not actually come out yet, it will go on to Amazon and all the usual outlets.
Okay, so that's Kay Attwood. It's been brilliant having her on today. And for those of you, I would highly stress, please get this book. This book sounds absolutely amazing. And if you're a dog owner and you're looking for a very good dog trainer, behaviorist, Kay Attwood is your lady.
Ah,
So
thank you.
where can people find your website?
My website is www.kay and then the number 9 services.co.uk.
There you go. So that's the end of my chat, my wonderful chat with Kay Attwood. So until the next time, everybody, have a good one.